My name is Ananya Verma. I'm 34 years old. And if you think a strong woman can never be trapped, never be used, never be betrayed by the people she loves most, then this story will change your mind. Because I did everything right. I studied hard. I built my career with my own hands. I married a man I believed was kind, simple, and honest. And yet, one evening, standing silently outside my own living room, I realized something that made my blood run cold. My marriage was not a mistake. It was a plan. A plan where my love was the bait, my loyalty was the investment, and my money was the reward. If someone had told me that the family who smiled at me every morning, who called me their pride, who touched my head and said, Beta, you are like our own daughter, was secretly counting how much I was worth, I would have laughed. If someone had said that my husband, the man who held my hand during festivals, who said, I do not care if you earn more than me, was quietly waiting for the right moment to discard me, I would have said, not my husband. Never. But betrayal does not always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it comes softly, with folded hands, with emotional stories, with words like responsibility, family, and trust. I did not lose my marriage overnight. I lost it slowly, payment by payment, decision by decision, until one day I understood the truth. I was never their daughter-in-law. I was their solution. And the moment I stopped being useful, they were ready to replace me. What they did not know was this. I heard everything, every laugh, every plan, every sentence where my name was spoken, like a number. And from that night onward, I stopped being a wife who hoped. I became a woman who prepared. If you believe family should never feel like a transaction, if you believe a woman's strength should not be mistaken for weakness, then stay with me. Because what came next, they never saw it coming. Comment number 1 if you want to hear the full story. I was not raised to depend on anyone. My father worked in a small government bank branch. My mother taught primary school children in a dusty building with broken fans and cracked blackboards. They never gave me luxury, but they gave me something far more dangerous: self-respect. From a young age, I understood one simple truth. In this world, a woman who wants security must first learn how to stand alone. I studied harder than most. While others attended weddings and festivals, I stayed back with textbooks and cold cups of tea. There were nights I slept with numbers spinning in my head, and mornings I woke up already tired. But I did not complain, because every mark, every certificate, every promotion felt like one brick in a wall I was building around myself. A wall strong enough to protect me. By the time I reached my early 30s, I had what society calls success. A stable job in Gurgaon, a good salary, my own apartment, respect at work. People would often say, half joking, half serious, any man who marries you will be very lucky. They never asked if I would be lucky too. Love, for me, was never a priority. Not because I did not want it, but because I had seen too many women lose themselves trying to hold families together. When I dated, men admired me from a distance. Up close, many felt threatened. One of them once said, "You make me feel like I'm competing with you every day." I smiled and pretended it did not hurt. But that night, sitting alone on my bed, I wondered if being strong meant being alone forever. That was when Rohit entered my life. He did not chase me. He did not boast. He listened. When I spoke about work, he did not interrupt. When I spoke about my parents, he asked questions. And when I once joked that I was probably difficult to live with, he looked at me and said, "Strong women are not difficult. They are just rare." Those words stayed with me. Slowly, without me realizing it, my walls lowered. Not all at once, just enough for one person to step inside. I told myself I was being careful, that I was choosing wisely this time. I did not know that the most dangerous traps are not built with force. They are built with patience. And the first crack in my carefully protected life did not come with a fight. It came disguised as concern. Concern for parents, concern for family, concern that sounded like love. And that was where everything began to change. I met Rohit at a wedding in Noida. Not a grand one, just a simple family function with loud music, too much food, and relatives asking uncomfortable questions. I had gone only because a close friend insisted. I stood near the corner with a glass of juice, already planning my exit. That was when Rohit walked up to me and said, "You look like someone who wants to escape." I laughed. Not because it was clever, but because it was true. We talked that evening without effort, no flirting, no pretending, just two people exchanging honest thoughts. He told me he worked in HR consulting, that his income was modest, that his parents lived in an old house in Ghaziabad, that he believed a simple life was better than a flashy one. What struck me was not what he said. It was what he did not say. He never asked about my salary, never showed discomfort when I spoke about work. When I mentioned a promotion, he smiled and said, "You earned it." After that night, he started messaging me. Not constantly, just enough. "Did you eat? Long day? Drive safe." After years of emotional noise, his calm felt like relief. 2 months later, he said something that stayed with me. "I do not want to compete with you. I want to stand beside you." I told myself this was maturity. This was safety. When he met my parents, he touched my father's feet and spoke softly to my mother. They liked him instantly. "At least he's grounded," my mother said. "And he respects you," my father added. When I met his parents, they were warm. Too warm. His mother held my hands and said, "We always prayed our son would marry a girl like you." His father smiled and said, "Rohit is very lucky." Looking back, I realize something now. No one ever asked if I was lucky. We married 6 months later, a small ceremony, limited guests, simple rituals. On our wedding night, Rohit said, "I promise I will never make you feel alone." I believed him. The first few months were peaceful. We split chores, we cooked together. He waited up for me when I worked late. But slowly, small things began to feel strange. When bills came, he said, "You handle numbers better." When relatives asked about finances, he laughed and said, "She is the brain of the house." At first, I felt proud, trusted. Then came the first real pause. One evening, while we were having dinner, Rohit said casually, "My parents are getting older." I nodded. He continued, "They worry about the future." I waited for him to finish. And then he said something that changed the air in the room. "I think we should start thinking more seriously about them." I did not know it then. But that sentence was not concern. It was an opening move. After that conversation, Rohit started mentioning his parents more often. Not in a dramatic way, not with complaints, but in soft, careful sentences that sounded like concern. "Ma forgets things these days. Papa's blood pressure has been unstable. They get tired easily." He never asked for anything directly. He just painted pictures. Pictures of aging parents sitting alone in an old house. Pictures of responsibility quietly knocking at our door. At first, I listened. I nodded. I understood. In our culture, caring for parents is not a choice. It is duty. And Rohit knew that. One Sunday afternoon, we went to visit them in Ghaziabad. Their house was old but solid. Cracks on the walls, a small backyard with dry plants. His mother sighed and said, "This house feels too big for just the two of us now." His father added, "We do not want to be a burden." Those words hit exactly where they were meant to. On the drive back, Rohit stayed quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I was thinking about something." I waited. "What if we renovate their house? Make it into two sections. We live close, but still separately." He said it calmly, as if he had been rehearsing it. I asked, "How much would that cost?" He hesitated. "Maybe a little expensive, but it would be an investment for family." Family. That word again. That night, I did not sleep well. I told myself this was normal, that many couples do this, that I was overthinking. A few days later, Rohit introduced me to a contractor, then an architect, then a family friend who knew about loans. Everything moved very fast. When I asked about finances, Rohit smiled and said, "We will manage. You are better at planning anyway." Slowly, decisions stopped being discussions. They became assumptions. One evening, while his mother served tea, she said softly, "You are very lucky, beta. Not every family gets a daughter-in-law who understands responsibility." I smiled. But something inside me tightened. Responsibility, sacrifice, understanding. Those words began to follow me everywhere. When I hesitated, Rohit said, "They are old. Tomorrow we might regret not doing enough." And each time, guilt answered before logic could. The truth is, the trap did not close suddenly. It tightened gently, with emotion, with expectation, with silence. And the night I finally said, "Okay, we will do it," everyone looked relieved. Everyone except me. Because somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered something I did not want to hear. This was no longer just about family. It was about how much I was willing to give and how much they were ready to take. If you feel something is wrong but cannot explain why, type yes in the comments. Because what happens next is where the real cost begins. Once I said yes, everything changed. Not emotionally, practically. Meetings started happening without me. Calls were taken in the next room. Decisions were made before I even knew there was a decision to make. One evening, Rohit placed a file on the dining table, architect drawings, cost estimates, loan discussions. He spoke quickly, as if the faster he talked, the less I would question. "This is just the initial plan. We can adjust later." I flipped through the pages. The numbers made my chest tighten. I looked up and asked calmly, "So how are we splitting this?" Rohit did not answer immediately. He picked up his water glass, took a sip, then said, "I was hoping you could handle the upfront cost." I blinked. "Upfront cost?" He nodded. "Just for now. My parents are already stressed. It will be temporary." Temporary. That word followed me for months. I asked, "How much are we talking about?" He hesitated again. "Maybe 20 to 30 lakhs at first. Then we will see." Something inside me shifted, not loudly, quietly. I said, "Okay, but we document everything." He smiled. "Of course." The first transfer left my account 2 days later. Then another. Design fees, material deposits, advance payments. Each time, Rohit said, "I will balance it later." Later never came. When I asked about his contribution, he laughed lightly and said, You know, my income is limited. You are better positioned. Better positioned. At family gatherings, the tone changed. Relatives started saying things like, she manages everything. She is very capable. His mother would look at me with admiration and say, we are so lucky to have you. Lucky. That word began to feel heavy. One night, while updating my personal budget, I realized something. In 3 months, I had paid more than I ever had for anything that was not mine. Not my house, not my parents, not even my decision. When I brought it up, Rohit frowned. Why are you making this about money? You are thinking like a manager, not a wife. That sentence cut deeper than I expected. I replied softly, I'm thinking like someone who needs clarity. He sighed. You always overthink. This is family. Family. Every question I asked was answered with that word. Every concern was dismissed as selfishness. Soon, bills started coming directly to my email. The contractor stopped calling Rohit. The architect sent me updates. Loan officers asked for my documents. Without any formal discussion, I had become the point of contact. The provider, the planner, the payer. One evening, I overheard Rohit telling a cousin, she likes control, let her handle it. I stood frozen. Control. I had never asked for control. I had asked for fairness. The truth became impossible to ignore. Roles had shifted. I was no longer the partner. I was the backbone. And backbones are only noticed when they crack. The night I transferred the largest amount yet, I sat alone in the bedroom and stared at the confirmation message. My hands were steady. My heart was not. Because for the first time, a thought crossed my mind that scared me. What if this was not support? What if this was expectation? And what happens when someone expects you to keep giving until there is nothing left? That question stayed with me, and it would soon demand an answer. The truth did not come all at once. It slipped out slowly, carefully, as if it had been waiting for the right moment to wound me. One evening, while going through the renovation spreadsheet, I noticed a line that did not belong. An interest payment. Not small, not recent. I called Rohit into the room. My voice was calm. This interest amount, I said. What loan is this for? He glanced at the screen and then looked away. It is old, he replied. Nothing to worry about. I did not move. Old? How old? There was a pause. The kind of pause that tells you the truth is about to change shape. Finally, he said, my father made some investments a few years ago. They did not work out. I asked, how much? He did not answer. How much? I repeated. About 1 crore, he said quietly. The room went silent. I felt the air leave my lungs. Not because of the number, but because of everything it explained. The rushed renovation, the urgency, the pressure, the way decisions had been pushed forward without clarity. I asked, you knew about this before we started? He nodded. Not the full amount, but I thought I could manage it. Manage it? With my money. I stood up slowly. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at me, almost irritated, because you would have said no. And my parents were already under stress. In that moment, something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was the quiet collapse of trust. I had not been helping a family. I had been covering a debt hidden behind emotional stories, a debt disguised as responsibility. I sat back down and asked one last question. How much have I already paid? He hesitated, then said, around 40 lakhs. My hands started shaking. 40 lakhs. My savings, my safety, my future. And yet, no one had thought it necessary to tell me the truth. That night, his mother called. Her voice was gentle. Beta, do not worry. Everything will be fine now. Fine. I realized then that they were relieved. Not ashamed, relieved. Because the burden had shifted to me. I did not argue. I did not shout. I did not cry. I simply said, I need some time. That night, lying beside my husband, I stared at the ceiling and felt like a stranger in my own life. Every memory replayed itself differently. Every smile, every word about family. I finally understood something that scared me more than the debt itself. They had never planned to tell me, not fully, not honestly. They had planned for me to pay and keep paying until it was done. If you have ever realized that trust was taken for granted, not earned, stay with me till the end of this video. Because the moment I stopped trusting was the moment I started seeing clearly. The night everything broke was not dramatic. There was no shouting, no confrontation, no tears. It was an ordinary evening. I came home earlier than usual because a meeting was cancelled. The house lights were on. Voices floated out from the living room. I stopped near the door without thinking. My hand was still on my backstrap. I heard my mother-in-law's voice first. Soft, relaxed, almost cheerful. She is very capable, she said. If it were not for her, we would be in serious trouble. My father-in-law laughed. God was kind to us. Our son married the right girl. I felt a strange relief for 1 second. Maybe I had misunderstood everything. Then Rohit spoke. His voice was casual, almost bored. She worries too much. But that is fine. She feels responsible easily. There was a pause. Then he added, once the housework is done and most of the debt is cleared, things will be easier. Easier. My chest tightened. My mother-in-law chuckled. After that, we should think about the future. What future? Someone asked. Rohit replied without hesitation, we will see. She will start asking questions sooner or later. My father-in-law said, then you should be careful. Women like her do not like surprises. Rohit laughed. Not nervously, not awkwardly. He laughed with confidence. That is why we should stretch it slowly, emotionally. She does not say no easily. Another voice joined in. A woman's voice, light, familiar. I still cannot believe she agreed so quickly, the woman said. Strong women usually think more, Rohit replied. They do think, they just feel more. The room spun. That was the moment my heart stopped trusting my ears. My mother-in-law said, once everything settles, we will not have to depend on her anymore. Rohit responded calmly. Exactly. Every phase has its use. Use. That word landed like a slap. I stood frozen. Every sound became sharp. Every breath felt loud. This was not a misunderstanding, not stress, not poor communication. This was strategy. A family discussion, a shared understanding, a plan that included my money, my effort, my sacrifice, but not me. I realized then that I had never been part of the conversation, only the solution. I did not enter the room. I did not interrupt. I turned around slowly and walked back out of the house. I sat in my car for a long time. The engine was off. The street was quiet. My phone buzzed. A message from Rohit. Where are you? Did you reach home? I looked at the screen and felt nothing. That night, I did not cry. I did not feel angry. I felt empty. Because betrayal hurts. But realization is worse. It strips every memory of its warmth, every word of its meaning. From that night onward, I stopped hoping they would change. I stopped believing I could fix this. And quietly, without telling anyone, I began preparing to leave. If you are still watching, stay with me, because what I did next was not emotional. It was intentional. From that night onward, I changed, not on the outside, but on the inside. I did not confront. I did not accuse. I did not let my pain show. I smiled. I nodded. I continued exactly as before. And that was my greatest advantage. Rohit believed I was still the same woman, the one who felt guilty easily, the one who carried responsibility without question. So he relaxed. He spoke freely. He assumed. He stopped being careful. And I started watching. I kept paying the bills on time, without reminders. Each transfer, each receipt, each invoice. I saved everything. I created a private folder, dates, amounts, messages, emails. I did not know yet how I would use them. I only knew I would need them. At home, I acted tired, buried in work, distracted. When Rohit asked, "Are you okay?" I answered, "Just busy." He hugged me from behind sometimes, thanked me, told me his parents were grateful. I felt nothing. Behind that silence, I was learning. I learned that the renovation loan was never in our name. I learned that most payments were traced directly to my account. I learned that my name appeared on more documents than I had ever agreed to. One afternoon, while Rohit was out, I quietly opened his laptop. Not to spy, to confirm. There were messages, short, casual, updates about payments, about timelines, about when things would be settled. No messages about me, only about what I provided. That was when I stopped feeling confused. Confusion is what keeps people trapped. Clarity is what sets them free. I also began recording conversations. Nothing dramatic, just normal family discussions, casual comments, offhand remarks. They did not notice because they never thought I would listen. At the same time, I contacted a lawyer, not to file anything, not yet, just to understand what are my options. What am I legally responsible for? What happens if I stop? The answers were calm, clear, and powerful. For the first time in months, I slept deeply because I knew something they did not. I was no longer reacting, I was preparing. Every smile I gave them after that was calculated, every agreement temporary, every payment strategic. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. If you're still watching this video, do one thing. Do not comment yet. Do not like yet. Just stay. Because what I did next was the moment everything turned in my favor. Once I understood the rules, I stopped playing blindly. I did not rush. I did not warn anyone. I moved quietly. The first thing my lawyer asked me was simple. Whose name is on the debt? Not who paid, not who promised. Who was legally responsible? The answer surprised even me. Most of the renovation payments had been made from my account. Several documents listed me as the primary contact. Some loan communications had my email. My signature appeared more than Rohit's. I had not noticed it before. Because I trusted. Because I believed marriage meant shared intention. It did not. I began correcting that mistake. One by one, I requested copies, loan statements, renovation contracts, payment confirmations. I did not act emotional. I acted professional. At home, nothing changed. I still cooked, still asked about his day, still transferred money when needed. That consistency made them careless. Then came the most important step. Through my lawyer, I approached the lender handling the largest part of the debt. Not as a worried daughter in law, but as a guarantor who had already paid a significant portion. I asked one question: what would it take to assign the remaining balance to me? The conversation was brief. Numbers were discussed. Documents were reviewed. Within weeks, the structure shifted. I was no longer just paying the debt, I was holding it. At the same time, I reviewed the property papers, the house, the renovation permits, the municipal records. There was a technical issue, a missing update, an opportunity. I suggested to Rohit that we streamline the paperwork for tax purposes, for clarity, so there are no problems later. He agreed without hesitation, signed where I pointed, trusted my calm. He never asked why everything now required my name. By the time the final documents were registered, the balance of power had changed. Quietly, legally, completely. I was no longer funding their future. I was controlling it. And the most dangerous part was this: they still thought I was unaware, still thought I was grateful, still believed I would keep paying without question. That illusion protected me. Every time Rohit thanked me, every time his parents called me their pride, I nodded. Inside, I counted days, documents, steps, because leverage is not built in anger, it is built in patience. And when you finally hold it, you do not announce it. You wait. If you are still watching, stay with me. Because the moment they felt safest was the moment everything was about to come out into the open. I chose the moment carefully. Not a fight, not a breakdown, a moment when they felt safe. It was a quiet evening. Dinner had just ended. The house was calm. Rohit was on his phone. His parents were discussing the renovation timeline. Everything felt normal. That was when I spoke. I think we should talk about the paperwork, I said. My voice was steady. Rohit looked up. About what? The loan, I replied. And the house. There was a brief pause. Then he smiled. Why now? Everything is almost done. I nodded. Exactly. I placed the documents on the table. Loan statements, assignment papers, updated property records. One by one, Rohit picked them up. His expression changed slowly. Confusion, then concern, then fear. What is this? He asked. I looked at him and said calmly, the remaining debt is now under my control. His mother frowned. What do you mean? I continued, I am no longer just paying it. I hold it. Silence filled the room. Rohit tried to laugh. This is a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, I said. It is legal. It is documented. His father leaned forward. Why would you do this? I met his eyes. Because I was never told the truth. Because my trust was treated like currency. Rohit's voice rose. You could have talked to me. I replied softly, I did. You just chose not to listen. He stood up. This is not fair. I stood too. It was never fair. For the first time, they saw me clearly, not as help, not as responsibility, but as someone who had stepped out of their reach. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I simply said, I am done carrying what was never mine. Rohit's face went pale. Are you leaving? I paused, then answered, I already have. If you are still watching, type number 2 inches the comments. Because the final part of the story is not about anger. It is about what happens after the truth is revealed. I did not leave that house in anger. I left in clarity. There were no dramatic scenes, no shouting, no final arguments, just silence. The kind of silence that comes when something inside you finally settles. In the weeks that followed, I handled everything through the law, not to punish, but to protect myself. I moved into a small apartment closer to my office. Nothing fancy, just quiet, just mine. For the first time in months, I woke up without fear, without guilt, without the weight of other people's expectations pressing on my chest. Rohit tried to call. His parents sent messages, long ones, emotional ones. I did not reply. Not because I hated them, but because I had finally learned something important. Closure does not come from explanations. It comes from boundaries. I began rebuilding my life slowly, carefully, not around anyone else's needs, but around my own. I focused on my work, on my health, on the parts of myself I had ignored while trying to be a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, a good solution. People often ask why I did not see the signs earlier. The truth is, I did. I just chose to believe love would be enough to fix them. It wasn't. Love without honesty becomes a transaction, and trust without respect becomes a liability. I do not regret loving, but I will never again confuse sacrifice with duty. Today, when I look in the mirror, I do not see a victim. I see a woman who learned, a woman who chose herself, a woman who walked away before she disappeared completely. If you are watching this and feel something familiar in my story, if you have ever been made to feel guilty for asking questions, for wanting fairness, for protecting what you worked hard to build, then tell me, did Ananya do the right thing by walking away? Or should she have stayed and tried to fix it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think.